country had a DNA profile, Ireland's would be mapped here in the National Archives.
I've never seen this document before. This would be a lovely document to be hanging on the walls of the airport, actually, because that was the beginning of it all.
These files tell of people's hopes and dreams for a new and independent Ireland. But they're also laced with fears over sexual immorality, popular culture, and a general anxiety about the modern world beyond our Gaelic Catholic shores.
We were always that little bit further behind in Europe, where they were kind of much wealthier, and they had all these burgeoning ideas of council housing and garden estates and really big, strong urban ideas, and we were literally just getting our freedom.
I'm going to be trawling through these documents, most of which remain undisturbed since they were first deposited here, from all walks of life.
One archival box has the potential to hold 1,000 pages. The possibilities are endless.
An archive is not just a record. An archive is either a story or the start of a story.
In this series, I'll be delving into the boxes to uncover the stories that sit on these shelves, and heading out across the country to see where the documents take me. There are maps, plans and secret reports, letters of hope and of anger, records of the houses, schools and hospitals built all over Ireland, the crimes committed here, the estates left behind.
We have about 50 million records in the National Archives. So if you can imagine it, put them all in a straight line, and that would stretch from Dublin to Kilkenny. So any record you can imagine that tells a story about modern Ireland, they're in the National Archives.
I think anyone who likes stories, it's just the excitement of thinking what is in all of those boxes, this room we're in, all the rooms, box after box after box. Every single one of those boxes could have hundreds of stories.
Yes, and where we are here now in the forecourts, many of the boxes here are the wills. So we have every will belong to every person in Ireland that transfer across to us when they're 30 years old. So in each will is a family and a related story. And you then multiply that across every single one of the other records that we have. And our role really is to support people coming into the National Archives to be able to unlock those stories.
So with 50 million documents to choose from, where do I start? I'm looking for stories in these boxes that offer fresh insight into the way the country has developed over the last century. So I'm starting at the Department of Transport. I want to see what the records tell of how travel across Ireland has changed over the past 100 years. The First Minister given the job of sorting out Ireland's transport system was Erskine Childers, and this document gives us a pretty good idea of what our first ever Minister for Transport believed was the best way of getting Ireland moving. At the opening of the bus station in Cork in 1960, Childers talked about the closing of the West Cork Railway, describing the move from rail to road as being as irresistible as the tides. Today's railway map of Ireland is very different to that following the foundation of the Free State. There are far fewer railways all across Ireland, but what's also striking is the gaping hole in one corner of the island that once had a vibrant rail network. This folder, again from the files of the Office of An Taoiseach, contains a report from 1957 from the County Donegal Railways Joint Committee and the Strabane and Letterkenny Railway Company. The main topic for discussion is the closure of the local railway. So I travelled, by road of course, to Donegal to see this long abandoned railway and to meet the people who lived on the line. Molly, can you explain to me where we are now, the spot we're standing
This
at?
is Creevy, nearer possibly to Rusnowra than it is to Ballyshannon, roughly halfway. And this was the platform where people dismounted from the rail car and they walked down to Creevy Pier, the nearest place to access the sea and weather like this. This was the level crossing and that was the gatehouse. I wondered how they communicated, but I'm told give a message out once a week telling them if there was a special train, they'd know to have the gates open, let the train through.
It sounds quite risky, actually,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely.
And these pillars?
These are the original pillars that the gate hung from when the railway was put in. And my grandfather, he had worked on the railways in Scotland, so he came back when the railway was being laid in Donegal.
But are you saying your grandfather actually laid some of this line?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how far up he came, but he was the Gallagher man in charge of the line. And you'd hear the rumblings on the track before you'd even see it coming. Sometimes it could be early, and they'd see me coming down the fields, and they'd wait for me.
And wasn't it an incredible service?
Yeah, absolutely. It meant so much. See, I worked in Killybegs in my young days, and the amount of fish that was landed there, and before the rail, it was salted and cured. That's the only way they had to preserve it. But then they could get it to market. There was a way to get it to Dublin. You could get it to Belfast. It went across to the UK. Oh, if you were near the track, you were on the pig's back because you had a way to do business and go where you needed to go.
Rossnala is a small seaside resort with one of the most spectacular beaches in the country. The railway station opened here in 1905, and for over half a century it was the main route in and out of the village.
How much of this is intact from when the trains were going past here?
Most of it is that further in towards Ballyshannon, there are a couple of houses built on the track. You could walk, but if you were anyway fit, no, I'll not be trying it.
It was the fashion of the era, though, wasn't it? Trains went out of fashion.
There was supposed to be a promise given that the roads would be brought up to a standard, that the same amount of tourists would come and all that. The road from Ballintra to Rossnala has never been completed. There was a bit of work done on it, and then there was a fairy bush and a tree and a field, and the council lads refused to cut it down. And one night, the next door neighbour went out with a chainsaw and he left the tree down, but he was down himself within the week.
So the man who cut down the tree?
Yeah, and I knew him, and I knew his wife. He was a young, strong, healthy man. And that road has never been tackled since. And that 59 is a long, many years ago.
Do you think you'll ever see a rail line back in Donegal?
It was very hard to get the powers to see the value of it, but I think there's a different mindset at the moment. We're serious about climate change and all the rest of it. We're going to have to do something. You know, I'm on the board of the museum in Donegal Town, and we refurbished their bow and brought it back. The excitement that evening when it got into Donegal, and there was children over. I saw one wee fella and he was rubbing it. You think it was a new pub, and the joy on people's faces. And got up into the engine. Now I didn't climb up; it was a bit too high for me. And it would mean so much to so many to see rail back again in Donegal, because we're totally cut off.
What is this beautiful machine here?
This is Drumbo, which is the one of the few surviving Donegal steam engines, and is the only original Donegal steam engine in the county, and was restored recently and now takes pride of place in our museum here. A very poignant accolade in it was the very last engine on the very last journey on the 31st of December 1959 that left this station to go to Strabane, and that was the very last journey for passengers of the Donegal Railway anywhere in the county, and the network then came to an end after that.
There was 2 railway companies operating in Donegal.
There was, yes, in the South Donegal there was the County Donegal Railways, and then on the north of the county was the Londonderry and Swilly Railways.
Okay, well tell me now about this document, the Transport Tribunal from 1959.
Yes, and the idea with that was to cut the line down at Ballyshannon and Rossnala. The railway had been losing money for some time, and I suppose they looked at the part of the track that was costing the most and they could do without, and they said to the government at that time, we want to cut this part of the track. And Donegal County Council were the ones that objected to it. And they said there's a number of reasons. I suppose one of the main ones was, number one, was mobility. People use it as their form of transport, and tagged into that was tourism And then the other big issue in Donegal at that time was the roads were horrendous. In fact, the Donegal Railway during the 1930s purchased a number of lorries and buses, and they actually had to replace them within 2 to 3 years because they were wrecked because of the condition of the roads. And really, if you wanted to get about, you had to use the trains.
Yeah, and that was very clear then. So when they had the objections from the county council, they decided to have a tribunal sitting.
What was interesting then, you said from a few tourist providers and hotels mentioned about the investment they'd done in relation to for tourism. You also had the ferry in Rossnowla saying if people use it particularly for going to the mass at the weekend, it was the rail cars they would have used to get in and out, and sometimes the steam trains too.
Yeah, just looking here, Mr. O'Halloran for the county council said that the closing of the line would be a very severe blow to the tourist industry in the area. And they had other hoteliers saying that they had been encouraged, basically, or under the auspices of Bord Fáilte to invest in their properties. You know, where was this going to leave them? So after this tribunal finished and there was this big debate about this one section stopping, very quickly after this, the whole rail network.
The whole lot in Swilly, it ceased operation, I think, in about 1954, and then the County Donegal in 1959, and that was the end of it.
The 1926 census was the first to be taken after independence.